Australia from Monash University. He is Doctor of Cultural Anthropology. Please, my greatest honor, Dr. Hariz Halilovich.
Thank you very much, Alma. I'll try to collapse here. Mene kod samo reprezentaciju nešto mi nije doesn't seem to be responsive. Where is IT? IT? Dok IT ne dođe, well, I need to first decide which language to speak, and as I prepared my presentation in English, and I was introduced as coming from Australia, I think it's appropriate to keep going in English. It is my great honor and a privilege to be one of the first speakers today, but this also carries quite a bit of responsibility. Speaking about Bosnia in Bosnia is especially a big challenge for me. So I presented many times to different fora and in different countries on different issues about Bosnia, but speaking about Bosnia in Bosnia itself, it's a challenge. This interdisciplinary conference is also, I see it almost as an opportunity for me to learn from other disciplines. So as you would agree, disciplines are entrenched and they present their own disciplines, and we always hear about other anthropologists doing similar work that we do, quite different work. But I do not have opportunity, or that often opportunity, to hear other disciplines and their perspectives on issues. Being jet-lagged and having slept for a few hours, I spent the last night from 3 a.m. this morning until 7 a.m. redrafting and reshaping my presentation. So I moved from kind of purely anthropological presentation and went by actually being more of an anthropologist in presentation itself. Anthropologists are known for positioning themselves in relation to their field, but I didn't want this to keep moving. So I thought I'm going to start with positioning myself to the field, but also kind of providing a bit of context and also introduction to concepts that I work with. In terms of my presentation today, which I hope to keep down to 20 minutes, I'll provide context, and I use plural here purposely, then move on to discuss or briefly outline a few concepts that will lead me to Hijacked Memories, which is the title of my paper, and what I mean by that. As well as to engage with contested landscapes of memory in Post-War Bosnia and Herzegovina, and discuss some of the forms of cultural memories and remembrance performances in contemporary Bosnia, moving into popular and public memory, real and cyberspace. And instead of having clear answers and recommendations for the end, I'll finish my presentation by asking some questions. The context, talking about memory and remembering, actually reflecting on the context, which is not only political context, but it's very much cultural context. And talking about Bosnia, we cannot really avoid speaking, and we shouldn't avoid speaking about Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, Socialist Federative Republic of Yugoslavia, which is, even in its symbols, it kind of represents memory, represents its history. We have the date of the country that was established in the 29th of November 1943. Symbols of flame, sadly, came to symbolize something else later. But Yugoslavia was very much performed as a cultural performance, in addition to policies of brotherhood and unity and policies of socialism and socialist self-management. There was a lot of memory performances, And for all of us who grew up in that country at the time, we will know all the dates and all the big performances. And today they may look a bit like, I don't know, North Korean style or something else. We may distance ourselves, but at the time it was very much something that was happening, if not monthly, but seasonally, and kind of marked the year. So performances of common Yugoslav identity from one part of the country at the time, from Vardar down to the south to Triglav down to the north or west, was a very important part of Yugoslav identity. Sadly, that nation, symbolized by flame, went up in smoke. And again, I always point to the series of wars, of armed conflict that took place in the region of former Yugoslavia. It was not one, even though they were connected, most of them directly, some less so directly, but connected armed conflicts that spread not throughout the 90s, and the complete dissolution of Yugoslavia continued even after that. Disentangling the Yugoslav memories kind of came before the actual conflict itself. So to separate the memories that were seen as shared between all different peoples and regions and republics of former Yugoslavia was quite a bit of a painful process. And War of Memory, as many historians and cultural anthropologists argue, started well before outbreak of the violence, but in a way symbolically announced it. Memory was used as an instrument in the process of awakening of ethno-nationalism, starting from known Kosovo bit to Bleiburg massacre to many other instances, while historical revisionism became really mainstream in the late 80s and early 90s, entering not only public discourse but also popular culture, from movies to music to arts, literature, and so on. And some of the symbolic years kind of became a new subject of debates, and became got new narratives. The famous Kosovo battle to First World War to the Second World War, all this kind of became a bit of subject to contestation. Now, finally, get to Bosnia. Bosnian War will be remembered, or is officially remembered by the figures, by statistics. So it lasted so many years. More than 100,000 people lost their lives, between 20 and 50,000 women got raped, 2.5 million people got displaced by force. They were forced to flee their homeland, and the regions that they left are very much still deserted places. 800,000 destroyed homes, and the list goes on. But a part of the Bosnian War will be also remembered by systematic destruction of cultural heritage, of cultural memory, of cultural institutions, like libraries, all forms of cultural heritage, sacred buildings, official and private records even. So destruction of memory was really systematic. And again, the famous burning of Sarajevo Vijećnica, the National Library of Sarajevo, had become to symbolize that. Bosnian War also produced some new terminology, and ethnic cleansing is one of them. Another one is memory side. In 1994, Bosnian professor Ivan Lovrinović published an article in the New York Times where he called this systematic obliteration of culture in Bosnia and the kind of cultural institutions memory side, killing of memory. The Harvard scholar Andreas Riedlmayer, actually developed that into a concept, and in his subsequent books and research projects he kind of confirmed this thesis about memory side. Now, the concept that I operate with, that I refer to and kind of draw upon, well, the list I realize is kind of populated by French philosophers and thinkers and anthropologists and sociologists. But it's just happened to be that quite a number of French scholars have seen memory as an important subject to engage with. So I'll I'm not going to dwell too much on the concept, but I would really like you to ask questions in the question time in case you would like to see how this concept may be applicable to my research, our research, to Bosnia itself, or if you generally would like to know more on this, or to critique if you have reservations. So Eric Hobsbawm and his famous thesis of the invention of tradition, where nations invent the past, or the thesis that argues that nations invent the past in order to legitimate themselves in the present. And that invention of tradition has been really a process that's still happening in Bosnia and in Yugoslavia. This is, in a way, really part of the thesis of imagined communities developed by Benedict Anderson, where in that imagining a nation, imagining a community, memory plays a central role. So imagining that we all have share a similar narrative. Pierre Nora expanded, or comes next in my palette of concepts here, with these sides of memory, landscapes of memory. The memory is not just a kind of narrative, not a story, not an idea, but a cognitive ability to remember something. It actually needs to be symbolized and physically present in memory sites. And for that, to go back to Yugoslav times, Yugoslavia was full of memory sites. So performances of memory took place usually at memory sites, and narratives about those sites also were part of them. Paul Ricoeur, in his famous multi-volume study of time and narrative, argues that that memory in history is not only about remembering, kind of recalling facts. It's very much about selective forgetting as well. And I think in Bosnia, that process has also been part of memory making and unmaking. I'll speed up a bit. Morris Halbach categorized different types of memory, but again, not really seeing them as existing separately from each other, but being part of the same memory. So autobiographical gets rid of collective and selectively repurposed, and then used as historical memory. Maria Sturken actually talks about entangled memories, how all these different memories, individual, collective, historical, public, and popular, are entangled together, and it's very hard to disentangle them, and I also used that term before. Historian Greg Denning, an Australian historian, saw history and cultural memory primarily through enactments, through performances, and even performances of music and embodied performances formed a part. The main concept that I use and scholar that I'm very much inspired by is Michel Foucault and his idea of popular memory. Even though he did not produce a multi-volume work on popular memory, it has been one of the most influential concepts and ideas in the field of anthropology specializing in. This led me to the kind of developing or coming up with my own ideas and thinking about situation in Bosnia that's taking place, kind of referring to all these different concepts and drawing from them to talk about hijacked memories, kind of something slightly different, having a bit of everything, but memories that they are appropriate, or memory sites that they are appropriate, taken over in local places and places of pain and suffering. And I'll show quite a few examples where this happened, and it happened across the country as well. Also, translocal memories of local places that become translocal. They move with people. These places do not remember, people remember. People were forced to flee their local homelands, took their memories of their suffering, but also memories of good times to them, so that you have such performances in St. Louis or Jacksonville, for example, or in Melbourne. As well as technology, how technology has impacted on reconstruction of memory, so that ethnically cleansed villages, in a way, got reconstructed as cyber villages in some instances. Anthropologists focus on very specific communities and very specific people and regions. So I'm not a political scientist. I'm not going to kind of talk about some big picture. I hope that big picture will come up from the kind of limited areas and case studies of field work that I've been engaged with. which mainly here in this presentation will relate to Prijedor, Western Bosnia and Podrinje or Žepa and Srebrenica region. Going to places of memories, or memory sites, as PNR called it. In Bosnia, it's again, you see a lot of layers of memories. Here we have a picture of a former dom kulturi, the cultural home, and almost every local community had a dom kulturi, which was the different cultural events, political events took place, but it was seen as kind of part of that Yugoslav identity where memory was performed, but also that idea of living in that country, that community nurtured. On this side, which is, as you can see, devastated, still, and this picture was taken later last year, there is still a long-lived central committee with Comrade Tito as a leader. So some of the letters actually you can't see, but it's still there. It's part of that pre-Bosnia, pre-war memory of Yugoslavia. Well, on this same memory site is a very clear exclusive symbol of remembrance. Is a eagle-shaped monument with a cross, and to be more explicit, what's about is actually says in Cyrillic to the defenders of the Serb, to the defenders who embedded their lives in the foundations of Republika Srpska. That's the monument. So it's to Republika Srpska soldiers. And all this is happening in a place called Trnopolje, which most of us, I would think, learned sometime during the 90s. It's one of the concentration campsites. So thousands of people were detained there, some killed there, others killed elsewhere, and majority of them expelled from the country. There is no mentioning of that site ever being a concentration camp. There is no memory site of the victims there. But that's what I call hijacked memories. So these memory sites, that's kind of layers of memory are there, but one which we would expect will dominate the narrative of the place is not there, is not physically present there, but it's narratives. Talking about Prijedor, I'm not going to do justice by mentioning one site. I'll mention two other sites, and Keratin is another concentration camp sites, and there is actually an illegal monument there, small plaque saying which the new owner of the factory allowed the survivors to place there. Omarska, the most notorious site, is not accessible, so it's a transnational company. Mittal still owns it, so you can only take in a picture from a distance. You can't get there. No monument of any sort, but there is a performance of Remembrance Day on the 6th of August when survivors and their families are allowed to visit the site for a few hours, and in a symbolic way they kind of commemorated those who perished there. But there is no memory site as such of the pain of these people. Another hijacked memory site. Talking about popular memory, and Foucault argued popular memory is memory of marginalized, those who do not have access to mainstream memory institutions, to media. And people do have their memories. They use it very often as a counter-memory against public memory, against official memory. And but we can see the villages around Prijedor that are mostly uninhabited, but with houses that are rebuilt and are empty, are these kind of new forms of popular memory. Popular memory, in Foucault's term, is something that's not necessarily having a physical space or being presented as a memory site. But this is very much private because it is in private land. It would be seen as illegal by the local authorities if it was done in public spaces, public memories. It operates somewhere in between, this in-between space between public and private, official and popular memory. And this one is a interesting one because it commemorates a local soccer team in the villages of BiH all 11 players from the local soccer team in the village called Sloboda, Freedom, perished during the war in the village. And the survivors now living across the globe came up with this monument to be built there. There are also private, literally in the private courtyards, in avlijas, in people's in the backyards, monuments commemorating victims. Now I'd like to move from Western Bosnia to Eastern Bosnia and talk about another kind of village and performance or reclaiming of memory. This one is a village of Žepa, and Žepa is possibly very well known to people who read Ivo Andrić. Before he published The Bridge over Drina, he wrote A Bridge over Žepa, or Most na Žep. And in the last few years, I've been visiting Žepa in different parts of Žepa, and the pictures from there about from the village are like this. So there is no actually Žepa as such, or Žepa as it existed once. The bridge is still there, the famous bridge that's been described in the novel. The houses are grown by vegetation, no people. But if you see clear kind of destruction everywhere. But if you put a Žepa in the Google search engine, it will come, it will almost go up like that. But it's kind of, we are kind of very vibrant village with, rich website, with forums, with, events taking place. You would think it's a kind of very village that's very much alive. And it's really made of people living in different parts of the globe, and they are kind of reconstructing their local identity and memories in cyberspace, in a way that ethnically cleansed village becomes a cyber village. And Žepa is one of such villages, and there are many more. I will have a very good time. The internet and kind of the cyber space has become a space for contestation of different memories. In Priedo, for example, as we know, that the current and long-serving mayor has denied, not only denied, has actually outlawed any performances of memory, use of vocabulary that would be offensive, like genocide. There is no public acknowledgement of the atrocities that took place there during the 90s against the Bosnians and the Croats mainly, but against Priedo citizens, I would say. While people only can kind of engage in memory making in their private backyards, in their cemeteries, in their villages, internet has provided them with a powerful tool and space, with an alternative space where they can contest memories kind of as inputs. And here we have an official website of the local Priedo city with the mayor and kind of announcement. And if you go to the website, well, what you may first see it's in Cyrillic, but there's also a Latin option, there's English. It's an ordinary socialist town, post-industrial town, not unlike many other in the former Eastern and Southeastern Europe, not other places. A very ordinary place, you would think. But again, the magic Google will actually very often lead you first to my Priedo, more Priedo website. So, and then you would need to see which Priedo, that's Priedo, there are two Priedos. And it tells a completely different story. It's a Priedo that's the website that's run by people who are expelled and people who have different kind of memory to present and to perform. And it's full of everything that's missing on the first website, official website of Priedo, official memory of Priedo. It's actually here about the sufferings, about people who perished, about projects, about art, culture, about Priedo, that kind of alternative Priedo. And that Priedo, again, it competes equally and maybe even gets more hits. If you get Google Analytics, those who are into numbers will see that my Priedo is a much more popular site than official Priedo's website. So internet has become an alternative, and I think Foucault missed these times. So to add to popular memory the marginalized have a medium now through which they can engage in memory making and contestation process. Well, it would be great to come up with some recommendations, answers, what to do, with memory in countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina and communities like Prijedor and Žepa and elsewhere in the region. And unfortunately, I do not have answers. But what I think is a big challenge for researchers, for academia, and anyone in civil society, I'm not going to mention the politicians, would be to not to reconcile the competing memories as such, but to find ways how to utilize memories for reconciliation and social healing. And I think there's a potential, but up to this stage they kind of exist in parallel universes and don't intersect unless they clash. And in the process to turn places of pain to places of hope. And I'm really looking forward to hearing psychologists, artists, and to learn from you to see how this can be done. I'll finish here. I had an animation which I thought I'll show, but I think I'll leave it here and would be very happy to engage with your questions and elaborate on any point that might have been a bit, just summarized in two few words. Thank you very much.